everyone. Today I have with me author extraordinaire Seanan McGuire. Thank you so much, Seanan, for being with me today. I am so happy about it. And Seanan's read one of many books. Here we go. Is this the last one? Is this the latest?
That is the latest. It's by far not the last.
No. I meant the last one that's been the last one that they...
Yeah, no, the only way that would be the last is if I get hit by a bus tomorrow and actually it's too late to stop several other things from coming out. So even that will not save you.
Right. This is the latest, and I'm going to read the title because every time I write it in the wrong order. So it's Dusk or Dark or Dawn or Day.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And you know what? I'm just going to stand up and applaud at this book because
Aww.
I love this book so much. Okay?
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. And I read it in half a day. I mean, I just didn't put it down. I just sat down, read the book, got up, ate lunch.
Don't.
This is not a book to read if you're thinking you're going to take a week to read a book. This is not your book. Okay.
No, it's not very long. It's technically what's called a novella rather than a novel. So it is under 50,000 words in length. It's designed to be consumed over the course of 1 or 2 afternoons.
Yes. But you know, I never really read a lot of this size, but now I'm like, wow, because I always think, is it a half, am I going to want more? Does it wrap up? Wraps up beautiful. I mean, like I said, I sat down, I read it, I was like, I couldn't stop, and that's because it was so good, and, I was like, wow, that is just amazing, and I have so many questions, which is why I like having my authors on, but let's see if I can sum it up for people so that they're not totally lost, and then that's even weird, trying to sum this up. That's why it's so good. There's so much story into. So Jenna, main character, loses her sister, freaks out, and dies too, and becomes a ghost. Am I on right now?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. She meets a witch, Brenda, and then there's this, they're in New York City, and all of a sudden, all the ghosts go missing, and they're on an adventure to find out why the ghosts have left New York City. And I have to say, when I started reading this, I've read Twilight. I've watched Supernatural for God knows how many seasons, 11 seasons. I feel like I'm up to date on, ghosts and Supernatural. But you had more stuff in here than even I could figure out, okay? Even I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much more involved. And then I was like, okay, so in Supernatural, you're always thinking they come up with it from somewhere. Is this stuff that the witches and the ghosts and the things they can do, is that like known in the ghost world? Or is that your imagination?
Most of this particular book was me.
Wow.
Yeah, but we all start from the same jumping on points, is the thing. I actually was a folklore major at the University of California, Berkeley, go Bears, and that means that what I went to school for, what I got my degree in, is essentially the same material that the folks who make Supernatural are drawing from. It's the same material that most of the role-playing games, most of the horror movies are drawing from, because we're pulling on American folklore and myth, which is a very large and rich set of stories and legends. I actually broke up with Supernatural quite some time ago, just as a lot of my friends thought it was getting good, and I wished them all the well. But what I had been in love with was that we finally had a TV show that was dealing with this American folklore, this American mythology, which is very frequently neglected because it's kind of new. It's a baby folklore, as such things are measured. And they're having a grand old time now with the Christian theology and with the ghosts, with the angels and demons. But that's not what I signed up for. I signed up for these ghost stories of the American road and the hitchhiking ghosts and the idea of the mythologization of corn. Which is something I enjoy far more than I probably should. So yeah.
I broke up with Supernatural too, I have to say. I'm sorry, Supernatural. We had a breakup. We broke up. It was sad because I love them, but
I'm pretty sure Supernatural's doing okay without us.
I'm sure they are, but I do miss them. I miss them. But I did think that it was getting a little beyond my thing too. So I might be just as equally as I don't know. It wasn't as interesting. It wasn't as interesting.
Yeah. Well, and this is by no means insulting their choices. So if someone is listening and is a Supernatural fan, please don't think that I am in any way judging you. We all like what we like.
Right.
But the Christian theology is a storytelling ground that has been trod a lot.
Yes.
And so I just got bored. That's not what I came for.
Right.
And I worry about that from time to time, which is why I try to go to kind of newer places. Mm-hmm. Not in the sense of, oh, no one's ever done this, but in the sense of people have done this less recently.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I'm saying, like, Supernatural back in the day when they were dealing with ghosts and, so I thought that I knew lots about them because I felt like I went to school with them. They were learning stuff. I was learning stuff, everybody
right.
was. So what I want you to explain to me, because I could not understand the time thing. And I went through it a couple times. I'm like, okay, so the ghosts were, when they die and they're ghosts.
In this setting, everyone has a preset dying day. You're supposed to die at a specific time, not necessarily in a specific manner, but just you are destined to die on December 16th, 2063. Okay. That is the day that your life is going to end. Now, if something happens, you run afoul of a witch, you step into the wrong place, somebody pushes you, you are killed maliciously, someone cuts off your life, then you will become a ghost because you didn't manage to reach your dying day. You died too soon. If that happens, you can age your ghost self by taking time from the living. You can go up to somebody who is currently 45 years old and take 5 years off of them, make them physically 40 again, and advance yourself 5 years toward your dying day. That will also move their dying day. So the ghosts in this world have it varies from ghost to ghost, but on the whole, very complicated system of how do we do this? How do we move the time around so that we're not forcing people to live too far past when they were supposed to die, we're not torturing people, we're not being unreasonable, and we're not revealing the existence of ghosts to absolutely everyone in the world, because they don't want to do that.
Right.
They find that to be very dangerous. People tend to react poorly to the discovery that you could literally live forever if the ghost next door just likes you enough.
Right. Okay. So, because when they start playing with time, well, when Janet, so she's trying to get to her death day because she dies too early, right?
Yes.
Okay, so she died.
She died way too soon.
And we don't know exactly. She ran into a storm. I don't know that we know exactly how she died. I think it's like she ran into a storm.
Yeah, she ran into a storm and she wound up running over the edge of a gully.
Okay.
She doesn't fully remember it herself.
Okay, so that was kind of cool. Yeah, and then what's cool is she takes a job as a suicide prevention hotline, and that's buying her time.
That's by her own choice, though. She's the one that said, I have to earn this time if I'm going to take it.
Oh, okay. So she's feeling like she owes it back to the world because she's taking some time. Okay, all right. I'm getting it. Like I was like, for me, it was, I kept thinking, wait a minute, they were saying borrow and then take. And I was like, okay, but the witches don't have anything to do with that, right?
No, the witches are connected to the ghosts only in that witches can perceive ghosts. Mm-hmm. So the risk to a ghost is much stronger if there's a witch in the area. Because a normal person isn't necessarily going to look at a ghost and think that they are anything out of the ordinary. A witch is going to look at a ghost and go, that's a ghost. I could do something with that. I could utilize that. Mm-hmm. Ghosts are, by and whole, not interested in being utilized. They're much more interested in being left alone.
Interesting. I love the whole, like, I like it probably a little bit too much too, because, I really got into the dynamic between her relationship with them and their relationship with her. And, Brenda and her are friends, even though usually the witches and the ghosts are not friends, but they end up being friends. And and then there's Sophie, the witch, the rat witch, and she's not necessarily a friendly witch to her, correct? Like
Sophie's not necessarily friendly to anyone. She's a little messed up.
Right. Now, but when Patty died, did she die at the right age?
She did. Patty killed herself.
Okay.
But Patty did not leave a ghost behind.
Okay. That's okay. So Patty died. That's why she didn't leave a ghost behind, because it was the right age. Got it. Thank you. I knew I was on to this.
She had reached her dying day.
She had reached her dying day. Well, I'm telling you, this story, it had me going. It is just incredible. And when you say you studied folklore, like this is the kind of stuff that is you'd studied in college, like all about. Really? I never.
Yeah, really.
Wow, that is awesome. So what is your, not getting religious or anything, what do you make of this stuff? You just like to write about it? I mean, do you have any, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that there are ghosts out there?
I hope so.
I know, I kind of do too.
See, it would be nice if this wasn't everything, but.
I mean, I do too. I always think that I think it wouldn't. I'm not afraid of that.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of that idea at all. So when you were in college, is that when you started writing, or did you always write?
Oh, I started writing when I was like 3. That was sort of unavoidable. We joke that I sold my soul at the crossroads at a very early age.
Yeah.
So, it works. I was pretty much unstoppable, so they just got me a typewriter and left me alone, and that worked out okay.
Wow.
I envy the parents of kids like me today because, well, they won't have to deal with the typewriter. Mine weighed more than I did, and it sounded like machine gun fire. So it's kind of a miracle that my mother let me live.
Awesome. So you did do, besides folklore, so you did creative writing in college too? Like you took a lot of...
Oh, God, no. No. Oh, no. Creative writing classes can be great for you, but I was both a female and working in genre, which meant creative writing classes were terrible for me. So I mostly avoided them. I took English classes to learn how words fit together, and I joined writing groups to learn how people thought words fit together. But creative writing classes were just not a good environment for me. I was a dual major in folklore and herpetology, so it wasn't like I had a lot of time anyway.
Oh, nice. And did you start publishing books in college, or did you wait till after college?
My first book was not published until September 2009.
Wow. You've done a lot of writing.
Yes.
Because you have an AKA that you write under.
Yeah, I'm also Mira Grant.
So what made you decide to do that? Are they different kind of books? Or...
They are very different types of books. It was a marketing decision. Mm-hmm. People tend to make assumptions based on the genre of the books that people have published. Mm-hmm. And Mira, we knew from the beginning, was not going to be writing or publishing books that were very similar to what Seanan was doing. So we wanted to create that distinction. I hate that it was necessary. I genuinely do. But it was very much necessary. I've had a lot of folks come up to me over the years and tell me straight up that they would not have read Mira had they realized that she was Seanan, that she was,
Really?
the pseudonym of an urban fantasy author, because urban fantasy is frequently thought of as a chick genre, and mostly for women. This is not true. Books have no gender. Genres have no gender. You can read whatever it is that makes you happy. You can enjoy whatever it is you like. I know men who love romance novels and women who love military science fiction novels and gender fluid people who only read cookbooks. I mean, it's entirely up to your individual tastes. But as long as those presuppositions are out there, it does influence what people will pick up, what people will buy, what people will be willing to be seen, because she has expanded my readership immensely, even as I occasionally resent her when I get email from her really diehard fans telling me that I should stop wasting time being myself and just be Mira more of the time.
That's not nice.
No.
But it's interesting because a lot of people who do an alias, like, they don't tell people who they're alias, you know, they just write under, you know, you just don't know who they are. Like, you're very open about who you are, you know, what books go under who, you know?
Well, it's part of it is just that I don't have the time or the sanity to maintain social media feeds for both Mira and Seanan. I would absolutely crack under that. And you can't not have a social media feed these days. It's just not possible in current genre fiction. So I kind of have to explain, where is Mira Grant? Why isn't she updating? Well, she's not updating because she doesn't exist. You know, she's not a real person. If you would like to hear from a real person, please come over here where the reality is. And I promise I will talk more than enough for any two individuals. But apart from that, I have been for a very long time. I was blogging actively in fandom and about fandom long before I was publishing books. And I had talked about what became Mira's first trilogy openly on my blog and on my social media platforms. So having been accused a couple of times of plagiarizing myself, which is always a fun experience, I did not want to launch Mira Grant and launch this new set of books, this new way of being myself, with a bunch of folks accusing me of stealing my stuff. I was pretty sure that would reduce me to a blind rage, and I'm not very helpful when I'm in a blind rage. I just shout and throw my arms around a lot. So it seemed everyone can pronounce. Why can't any of you pronounce it? Really? Okay.
I'm joking. You're very funny. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, first of all, you're absolutely right. Social media is just, it's taking everything to another level. And there would be there's hard to keep up with yourself, I'm sure, let alone try and act like there's somebody else out there. You know, that would be, that would be almost impossible. So, okay. So do you, when you're deciding about writing the books, do you like decide, I need another book over here, you know, for her, for Mira, or, you know, do I need another one? Well, how do you decide, like, when, you know, like, or do you go back and forth, or?
I am a traditionally published author. So I am published by large publishing houses who have me under contract. And I appreciate that immensely because I really enjoy paying my power bill. It makes me very happy to know that the electricity is not going to be cut off.
It makes your cats happy, too.
It makes my cats happy, too. And since I don't want them to hollow me out like Luke and the Tauntaun, I figured that is an important thing to continue doing. But that means I am very rarely sitting down and deciding what I'm going to write next. There's already a contract. There's already something that guarantees that what I'm going to write next is X or Y or Z. And that means that, you know, I don't have to decide, am I going to do Seanan or Mira next? Well, the contract says that the next book that's due is, in fact, a Seanan McGuire book. So, you know, get cracking. I tend to work in series length as both of myself. The shortest I have managed thus far is a trilogy. Mm-hmm. As Seanan, my first series is still going and no one knows when it's going to stop. You know, I really am a long-form thinker. Because that's what I grew up on, that's what I enjoy, and that means that's what I think in. But so when you're doing a series, well, if I'm going to pitch a series about genetically modified tapeworms taking over the brains of their host, that's very much in the Mira Grant brand. That's going to wind up being a Mira Grant book. If I'm doing a new urban fantasy series, that's very much a Seanan McGuire brand thing. That's going to wind up a Seanan McGuire book. There is absolutely no difference in how the books get written. There is no difference in my workflow. The only difference is whose name is going to be on the cover when it's done. Mira books take a lot more research than Seanan books, so they do have to be prepped and planned out way, way in advance. But that's partially because the Seanan books are still drawing on stuff I learned in college. I have a folklore library that most actual libraries would envy because I've been amassing it my entire life. I know where the research there is. I know who the experts are. The Mira books are a little more active in there. Well, I want to write a book about this. I don't know anything about that. Better go out and harass some scientists. And the scientists are very amiable about being harassed. I really appreciate that about them.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing to me because there are so many. I talk to so many people that self-publish, and I do talk to authors also that publish. But it's like I can't imagine somebody saying like, okay, so your next it's almost like this is what your next book, or do they give you like a time frame and say, okay, well, we need a deadline by a certain amount.
Okay, so the way, if you're a traditionally published author, the way that publishing works is, first off, you write a book, you find an agent, you go through all that. We're going to assume for a moment that you have gone through the basic steps of becoming a traditionally published author, because I did not prep for How Publishing Works 101 today. Right. So you've already got a book out. Yay! And it's time to show that you can do it more than once. It's time to write a second book. Right. What you'll do at that point is you'll talk to your agent. You'll say, hey, I think I'm ready for my second book. Your agent will say, well, what do you want to write? Now, if you're like me and you're working in series length, and that's really where you're most comfortable, you'll say, I'd really like to do the sequel to X. And they will then approach your publisher on your behalf, because that is what your agent does, to say, hey, Shannon's up for writing another book in this series. Are you up for publishing it? They will look at your sales statistics. They will look at how the first book performed. They will look at everything, and then they'll either say yes or no. Most of the time, when you're operating in the genres where I'm operating, your contracts will be between 1 and 3 books in length, so that by the time book 1 comes out, you're actually already working on book 2. But for a moment, we're assuming that you concluded your contract, you've exhausted it. They'll come back and say, yes, we would love you to write that book, or you know what, we'd really like to keep working with you, but that series is just not finding its audience right now. Would you be willing to consider something else? Now it's up to you. There's no assignment. There's no point where they say, okay, you have to do X. You can go, you know what, no, the only thing I really wanted to do with you was a sequel to the series you already own, and since you're not interested in that, we're parting ways. I'm going to go off and write another book that my agent can try to sell after it's finished. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you'll say, I love working with you. Your team has been amazing. And the fact that this book hasn't found its audience, I know is not your fault. So let's see if we can't do it the second time. And maybe then we can revisit. I've also been thinking about writing an urban fantasy about bears. So here's this book with the werebears, and I'd really like to do that. And you'll put together a pitch. Sometimes they'll want to see sample chapters, sometimes not. Put together a full pitch for it, explain what you want to do, why the bears are cool, why they should let you do the bears. And after that, if they like it, they'll say, yeah, okay, we'd like to do the bears. That's great. Your agent is going to be the one that figures out a lot of your deadlines and all of that. Most of the time, a book needs to be turned in roughly a year in advance. So the October Daye books, October Daye is my main series. That is the thing that started me off. My first book was in that series. If the universe has a sixth sense of humor, I'll be hit by a bus immediately after turning in the last book. I don't know. Those come out every September. In order for them to come out without any delays, without anything getting in the way of that publication date, I turn in the first draft a year ahead of time, which gives my editor time to go over it, make suggestions, compare it to previous books, make sure everything is still hanging together, that I haven't forgotten anything, and either sign off, which never happens because that is not what an editor is for. A good editor will find things that you did wrong, but either sign off or give me their editorial notes. Once I have the editorial notes, I'll make all of the appropriate changes, update the manuscript, turn it in, they'll accept it, and then the following September it comes out. By the time a book comes out, I have not only moved on to the next book, I'm probably on to the book after that.
Wow. That's great. I mean, that's amazing. I've always wondered that because I've heard people say, well, I'm on a deadline, and I'm like, well, how does that, how do the deadlines work? It's like, well, that's because you want it to be published at a certain time, or they want to publish it at a certain time. They have, right. So if you want to do one book a year, you could do one book a year. If you want to write more books in a year, you could write more books.
That is correct. Yeah. I think I would lose my mind if I tried to do a book a year. Like, I would actually explode. That would be dreadful. I don't want to go to that reality.
Well, that's good. We don't want you to go to that reality. We don't want to book a year. That's awesome. So you said you were a stand-up comedian. Was that in college?
College and high school.
Yeah.
I was very shy as a child. I still am, actually. I know that's difficult to believe, but there is a difference between a social engagement that has set rules, like doing an interview or guesting at a convention, and something like a cocktail party where you just have to mill around and talk to people. I don't want to go to your cocktail party. That sounds dreadful. What have I done to harm you so that you would do this to me? And so I got enrolled in stand-up comedy classes in an effort to make me a little less awkward. Maybe a little more popular with my peers, because, God knows what makes the weird, geeky, fat girl more popular with her peers is a sudden tendency to tell terrible jokes. That helps so much. That does not help. This is a terrible plan. Do not do this to your children. But so I was enrolled in stand-up comedy courses, and I did stand-up comedy for years. I still do very occasionally. Not nearly as often as I used to, because it is a job. I mean, people go, you're making jokes, haha, so funny. That's not a job. It's a job. Mm-hmm. You have to work on routines. You have to refine them. You have to practice them. The best routines are funny to you. Something that you don't think is funny, you're going to have a really hard time selling to someone else as funny. But a stand-up comedian who cracks themselves up on stage 9 times out of 10 is a terrible stand-up comedian. That's not... I'm not here to see you laugh at you. I already heard you were funny, or I wouldn't have come to your show. I'm here for you to make me laugh. You're failing. You're very bad at your job. Why are you getting paid for this shit? So, there's practice involved. There's timing. There's knowing what's going on in the stand-up comedy world. There's having an awareness of the acts that are playing well. You have to consume an immense amount of content at the same time being very, very meticulous about not stealing material, because people will catch on. If you're a thief, you're going to get caught, and that's not going to reflect well on you. People aren't going to want to work with you. The trouble is, we were talking about Supernatural earlier and how you felt very familiar with ghosts. Well, that's because Supernatural is pulling from a specific set of American myths. And those myths belong to anyone. Anyone can pull from those things. Mm-hmm. I sometimes honestly worry, because people do know that I watched Supernatural, and there is this very strong assumption to assume that anything that sounds familiar is stolen somehow. Well, I'm not stealing from Supernatural when I tell ghost stories. I'm stealing from American mythology. I'm stealing from this very specific folklore of the road that we have developed. And that's all public domain. The Supernatural guys, they don't own it. They can't own it. No one can own it. You can only own very narrow, specific interpretations thereof. Well, right now, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, politics are very large in the American consciousness. People are aware of them, and that's great. It's actually good for people to be aware of what is going on in the country where they live, and to feel like they are involved in the process, like they need to have some stake in the process. But if you and I were both given the assignment to write 10 jokes about current political figures, mm-hmm. we're pulling from the same pool of available political figures.
Right.
We're probably looking at some of the same things. Again, regardless of what our politics actually are, some of the same things are going to strike us as funny.
Right.
So you have to be hugely aware of what's going on, mm-hmm. because otherwise you do run the risk of, without stealing a thing,
right,
mirroring the joke of someone who is more popular than you.
Jimmy Fallon,
And that doesn't just happen, in the comedy. That happens all over the place. I was a big fanficker before I became a professional author. I would still be a big fanficker if I had time for it. I love fan fiction. I love the fanfic minds, which is where I learned a lot about writing. Mm-hmm. When several years ago now, a horrifying number of years ago, because we are all ancient, Buffy the Vampire Slayer did their musical episode. And I had the genius idea to parody, to parody the entire Buffy the Vampire Slayer musical episode to be a Harry Potter musical episode. Because Harry Potter was big and Buffy was big, and this would be great. And I did it, and I was extremely precise about my syllable counts and my scansion. It hung together really, really well. I found it a while ago when I was digging through my fanfic archives for something else, and it hangs together really well now. Like, I am proud of what I did. And I posted it thinking, aha, yay, that beautiful feedback that fanfic authors live for, it will come to me. And it pretty much didn't. And I went looking and found that a known Harry Potter big-name fan, someone who was known primarily for doing Harry Potter fan fiction, had done the exact same thing I had, which they didn't rip me off. It was parallel development. Right. You can't rip someone off in fan fiction. It was not the most original idea that has ever been had in the history of original ideas. No complaints there. But it wasn't as good as mine. Like, you couldn't sing half the songs. They had just kind of taken Harry Potter words and shoved them into the basic shape of the Buffy song. And yet they got all of the praise and the, oh my God, you're so clever, and all of that I had been hoping for. Because I was like 18 and I really wanted people to tell me I was, the right. fanfic equivalent of please tell me I'm pretty. And that is how everything kind of works. Like, that is how stand-up comedy frequently works. If someone who is better known than you has a joke first, it doesn't matter if you can prove that you developed your joke independently. Right. You've got to put it away.
Right.
No one's going to believe you didn't steal it, and they're just going to see it as you went and tried to rip off the popular kid, and we caught you. So, stand-up comedy, a lot of work, just like anything else. I don't really have time for it right now. And I work super blue. Super blue! I am the bluest. And that does not always make my readers super comfortable. And, well, it is not my job to make you super comfortable. When I'm prioritizing what I want to do with my time, sometimes if the question is, well, I could do this thing that I like, but it's going to make 90 people super uncomfortable. Or I could do this other thing that I like just as much, and it's not going to make anyone uncomfortable, and I'm not going to have to deal with hate mail on social media. Yeah. I will go with option number 2.
Right. And, that's why I was asking you in the beginning about, how much of it was in your head, was because my one son, when we were watching Supernatural, he actually would look it up. And they kept pretty good to what was known. And I didn't even know it was called like folklore, but they were really precise about it. They did follow at that time, and he even got the Supernatural tattoo.
Initially, Supernatural was very, very careful, and that's kind of what they sold themselves on. Again, initially, was being this Americana Monster of the Week show, and I really appreciated that about them. Yeah. I'm glad they have found success being something else, and I've got to assume that they made the change because they wanted to. And you should always tell the story you want to tell, period.
And from what my son says, who is the Supernatural super fan, he says that the deal is that they don't want to quit. And they've been offered other gigs, but they love doing that show so much, and that group of people who are working on it, they're just going to go until somebody says, go away. So.
Good. It is wonderful when you have the opportunity to do the thing you love forever. And,
right.
Even as you've got folks like me saying, I'm so sorry I broke up with Supernatural, you've still got folks that are showing up for every episode. And as long as they've got that,
I think they get a different crowd. They just have a different crowd of people that like that storyline better, And so I enjoy the old ones though. But that's what, when I was reading this, that's what I kept thinking about. I was like, okay, so is this following the same kind of folklore? And that's what I was wondering about the time thing too. But now I know.
Yeah, the time thing you do that actually does show up in certain ghost story mythos, but I would need a whiteboard and a flowchart.
That's okay. That's okay. That's why we have you, and that's why we have your book. And so what are we to expect next? What is the next published book?
Next Tuesday, actually, because time waits for no man, is a book called Magic for Nothing, which is the 6th in my InCryptid series. And that is about cryptozoologists dealing with everything and attempting in their own unique way to keep the world from falling apart. They are not always the very best at it, but they try really hard, and I feel it's important that we respect that. That is, it's book 6. You don't have to have read the earlier books, but I really enjoy paying my power bill, so you really do have to read the earlier books. More seriously, it will still make sense if you haven't.
Right.
I think that it is better if you have, because
so
I'm one of those people that does everything in order. Like, I watched season 1 of Parks and Recreation, even with everyone I know telling me not to. Yeah, see, you just made the face of why did you do that to yourself? And I did it to myself because I like to do things in order.
No, I did it too. People said the same thing to me. They were like, just don't watch the first season. But I can't do that. I have.
Yeah.
Like, when you tell me that's a 6th book, I'm like, okay, that's nice. And I'm sure I could just read the 6th book. But if I really want to experience it, I'm going to start with book 1. And I'm going to finish it with it. That's the way I do things too. So.
And I really appreciate that because, again, power bill. Yes. You know, I'm fond of things that pay my mortgage. I know that that's weird, but my dentist has this thing about wanting me to pay her too, so.
Right. What state are you in?
I am in the state of denial. I'm in Washington.
Because you say power bill, I was talking to this woman today, and she's a screenwriter, but she lives in California, and she was telling me that her electric bill was $1,100 this month.
That's horrifying.
So when you keep saying a lot, I'm like, wait, are you from California too? Do you have $1,100 electric bills?
I am from California, actually, but I moved to the Pacific Northwest last year, and I'm very happy here for all that it is phenomenally cold. My mother, who moved with me, spends most of her time complaining about that fact. I'm sure she will eventually stop. I hope she will eventually stop.
Right.
If she does not, well, we'll just burn that bridge when we come to it.
Well, no, I'm really happy that you don't have $1,100 electric bills. That's very
No. I did have a $12,000 veterinary bill. Yeah, Operation. That's about the face that I made.
Operation.
But
I'm assuming.
Yeah, Operation. My boy cat, who has not put in an appearance, got a blockage in his small intestine and nearly died. And he basically lived because I have a Patreon. That is why my cat is still alive, is because I have a Patreon and people did not. I'm forever grateful for that. Even as that figure still kind of puts me into shock. But, you know, he's my boy.
So I was going to say, you know, it's just kind of like your children. You're like, it's lucky you're cute. You're just cute. So therefore, I will do that for you.
No, he's not just cute. He's my boy. I mean, right. Maine Coons are big assholes that shove themselves into every aspect of your life. And he is the younger of my cats. You don't like to admit that math comes to the party when an animal is sick, but sometimes, unfortunately, it does. You have to hit the point of, is there a point to this? Am I going to be able to save them? Are they going to be able to have quality of life when I'm done? Am I just doing this for me and not for them? But he is young and he is strong, and we caught it as early as it is possible to catch something like this. And the vet he's made a full recovery.
That's what I was going to say. He's healthy now, right? So
yeah, he's healthy now. He'll live, another 10 years, 10, 15 years. I'll get my money out of the asshole.
Oh, hold on. How long do those cats live?
It depends. There is a genetic flaw in the breed. They are predisposed toward what's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, where the wall around the heart becomes outsized and starts to retain fluid, and that is eventually fatal in cats that have that genetic tendency. But there's something. There is something in everything. Right. Siamese cats die very young because their kidneys give out.
Our cat lived a really long time, though. So, but
exactly. You're always playing those odds.
Right.
And with Maine Coons, I've volunteered for the SPCA since I was 12 years old, and they were willing to start letting me. And I have seen way too many extremely excellent cats die young because of genetic problems we didn't know that they might have. So I have gone Maine Coon because I know what to watch for. I know what the genetic problems in the breed are.
So did they live
Assuming
to be like
that Thomas...
Do they live to be like 15?
They live to be like 20.
Wow.
If they don't have any of the genetic problems that the breed has a predisposition toward, then they can live to be in their early 20s. They're very healthy, very hardy cats.
Wow.
Something like this was only the second major medical I've had in the last 15 years.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, so...
I mean, they're really a part of your family. I'm sorry. If you have an animal that's with you for 20 years, that is,
Absolutely. And I maintain an emergency vet fund. I mean, I do plan for these things. You just hope that they'll never actually happen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was so nice talking to you, Seanan. I love you, and I love your book, and I'm so happy that I found it and I got to read it, and I'm happy I got to meet you, and I'm so excited for your next one. So we will just keep on looking for your books, and I will post this all over so everybody can watch you. But you are already pretty famous on YouTube, so it's not like,
The tube of views has met me.
Yes, and you're awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.